Welcome to the Elkhorn Slough Visitor Center in Monterey Bay. The SeaLevelRise Explorer was developed to show impacts from sea level rise and the intersection of transportation and ecosystem needs in one of California's most treasured estuaries. This experience summarizes the key findings from the Central Coast Highway 1 Climate Resilience Study. We hope it will shed some light on similar planning in the state on transportation and natural resource issues. Click on this screen to continue. If this is your first time in the experience, select the option I am new here to run. Take a look around the visitor center to get used to the space. You'll see flashing targets on the screen periodically. When you are ready, click on the flashing target to continue. Click on the flashing target, drag the slider, and release. The burning of coal, oil, and natural gas all produce greenhouse gases that form a blanket around the Earth. This blanket traps heat, causing global temperatures to rise, which can intensify severe weather patterns, but also cause glaciers and ice sheets to melt and seawater to expand, which both raise sea levels. These changes will create major disruptions for our planet and impact coastal communities in many ways. Elkhorn Slough, an estuary where freshwater and saltwater mix, is located on the coast of Monterey Bay. It contains the third largest extent of salt marsh in California and is important for many birds, animals, and fish, supporting extraordinary biological diversity. Nearly 50,000 tourists visit every year to birdwatch, spot the charismatic sea otters, and kayak on the slough's vibrant waters. The iconic Highway 1 crosses directly over the mouth of the slough. This 8-mile stretch is vulnerable to flooding at several points, where the highway traverses the wetlands. This low-lying area will experience rising sea levels and possibly increased storms, causing more frequent and intense flooding and eventually permanent inundation by ocean waters. This could impact coastal property, infrastructure. Have you ever been in a blimp before? Click on the aerial view to transition to an aerial view of the highway in Elkhorn Slough. Here you can see the mouth of Elkhorn Slough where it connects with the sea. In front of you is the Moss Landing Wildlife Area, a critical habitat for the threatened western snowy plover. Highway 1 runs along the coast and across the main slough channel. An average of nearly 40,000 cars use this section of highway every day. It is a critical connection between Santa Cruz and Monterey and provides access to the community of Moss Landing. Drag the circle on the left slowly to your right. See that water filling in? This is a tidal estuary where the tides come in and go out every day. When you drag the circle further to the right, you can see the impacts of sea level rise on this area. At 2 feet, sections of the highway go underwater. At 5 feet, the highway and adjacent areas are permanently inundated. While we can't say for sure when sea levels will reach these heights, it is likely the region will experience 5 feet before the end of the century. If nothing is done, flooding could worsen traffic and submerge sections of the highway. Disruptions could interrupt the movement of goods and impact commuters and tourists. See that blimp in the distance? Let's move to the Elkhorn Slough Reserve. Click on the flashing target. From this view, we are in the Elkhorn Slough Reserve, looking out towards the coast. While there are extensive areas of healthy salt marsh throughout the slough, Below, in the foreground, you see an area that was historically altered and degraded and has lost most of its salt marsh. Marshes help the land adapt to rising seas in two ways. First, they collect sediments from tidal waters, allowing them to build up in elevation. Second, they slowly move inland as sea levels rise. Across, you can see Hester Marsh, which has been restored by raising its elevation. Restoration will expand the marsh to nearly 100 acres. In front of you, you can see the rail line, which transports passengers and freight across 5 miles of the slough. Keep your eye on the rail line as you click the flashing target to see this area with 2 feet of sea level rise. The rail line is submerged and much of the existing salt marsh is converted to open water. Salt marsh is critical for a number of species, supporting 20,000 resident and migratory birds. It is the most at-risk habitat type to sea level rise in the slough. Click the flashing target to see this area. Most of the salt marsh and low-lying areas are inundated by seawater. This will mean more underwater habitats, like eelgrass, may flourish, but salt marsh will be lost. The slough has already lost over half of its salt marsh in the last 150 years. Click the next flashing target to explore what the slough will look like. Here we can see what extensive restoration of marsh area could look like. Over 700 acres of restoration was proposed for this area in this study. This will be most beneficial if it is completed before 2 feet of sea level rise, likely around mid-century. Restoration could facilitate over 50% more marsh than if no action had been taken. Click the flashing target. You can see much more marsh persists even with sea level rise. Now let's talk about what can be done to adapt the highway and ensure long-term resilience of ecosystems. When you are ready, click on the home icon to return to the visitor center. Click on the flashing target to see a 3D model of Highway 1 and the slough. This 3D model shows one vulnerable section of the highway just north of the bridge over the entrance to the channel. Drag the circle to the right to again see the projected. With 2 feet, sections of the highway go underwater. At 5 feet, the highway and adjacent areas are permanently inundated. One way to adapt the highway to sea level rise is to elevate it. This can be done using fill or piles. Click on Adaptation on Fill. Elevating on fill means using dirt to raise the highway and provide the opportunity to plant vital species along the long slope of the fill. In this approach, a much more gradual slope is used to create more habitat area and a buffer zone between the roadway and sensitive habitats. This is known as an ecotone levee. This area provides more salt marsh habitat now and room for salt marsh to move inland with sea level rise. This also protects the highway from flooding. Now click on Adaptation on Piles to see Here you can see sections of the highway are elevated on piles. If the highway is elevated on piles, it no longer interrupts the flow of water or movement of animals. But this option also allows water to inundate other habitat areas. Because of this, an ecotone levee with a gentle slope is constructed to protect the Moss Landing wildlife area and provide space for marsh habitat. The Central Coast Highway Resilience Study also considered other adaptation options. On the screen, you can see concepts for one option where a 4-lane highway would be elevated on fill. Here you can see another concept where the 4-lane highway would be elevated on piles. Another option considered was rerouting the highway inland to where the G12 road is today, as you can see in this image. Transportation and conservation needs in California go hand in hand. We hope that this experience illustrated some ideas and concepts that can be applied when planning for sea level rise resilience in California and beyond. Please visit our website at ambag.org to learn more about the Central Coast Highway 1 Climate Resilience Study. Thank you for using Virtual Planet Sea Level Rise Explorer Elkhorn Slough.